We are back, everybody. Just to let you know, we are live streaming. We are on item 4, rise of the close, which we don't have any today. So we're going to move on to item number 5.1, which is a delegation. Over to you, to introduce your team, and I think we have a presentation for you to run through, and then we'll have some time for Q&A after.
Thank you very much, Chair Stoner and the board. It's lovely to be here. I would like to introduce Chris Wrightson, who is our incoming executive director, and I am board chair of the Sea to Sky. Next slide, please. So we, as the Hospice Society, acknowledge the land where the society meets, volunteers and carries out work is on the unceded ancestral territories of the Squamish and Southern Satliam nations. And we are very grateful to be able to work and live and play in this area. Next slide. Our mission: compassionate care and support for individuals with life-limiting illnesses, their families, and the bereaved across the Sea to Sky corridor. So the Sea to Sky Hospice Society came into being in the 90s, and we were offering home-based care at that time. There was no hospice space. We became a registered nonprofit in 2006 to enable us to raise the money to build the hospice space that we have now in Squamish. Next slide. We work in partnership with Vancouver Coastal Health. Vancouver Coastal Health provides all of the actual palliative care team, and they now own the hospice space. We provided the funds to build the space, but it was then handed over to them, and so they do maintenance and all of the palliative care and all of the operations of the unit. Next slide. Our role is to provide that wraparound service. So we provide a compassionate care environment. We provide volunteer services with visiting and vigil sitting. We provide, and that's provided both in home and in a residential care setting, either the long-term care or in the hospice. We provide bereavement support services. We have one-on-one counseling. We do bereavement groups. We provide caregiver support services, and we have expanded our caregiver and bereavement groups to Whistler and now into Pemberton. We've got some stuff happening in Pemberton now. And we're working on community outreach, bringing an understanding of the hospice and hospice care in general to the community. Next slide. So in 2021, we started 2 endowment funds, one with the Whistler Community Foundation and one with the Squamish Community Foundation, and the I being to provide a backbone of financial support for the organization. We do not receive any government funding. All of our funding comes from grants, from delegations such as this, and from individual donations. And we have some very generous individual donors, but we also require some sort of solid knowledge that we're going to be good to go. So we figured starting the endowment funds would give us that backbone. Next slide, please. So an endowment fund, I'm sure you're all perfectly familiar with them, but the idea is that the money goes into the endowment fund. It's there for perpetuity. From there comes the interest earned on that endowment, and we can use that interest. Right now, we're reinvesting it, but in the long term, the hope is that that will provide us with some secure funding. And the power is that money that goes into that endowment fund continues to grow forever. Next slide. So our services are provided from Burry Creek to Mount Currie and all the way in between. And we, as I say, we provide in-house services, at home services. We provide services in hospital, at the hospice unit, and at Hilltop House. Next slide. So, any questions? What we're here to ask you for is support for the endowment fund. And we don't mind which one of you of the 2 endowment funds if you have a preference, but we are hoping that you would be willing to make a contribution to the endowment.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Keeping it within 5 minutes. I'm very impressed, and for all the work that you do across the corridors of the terminal illnesses and one of the most trying times of people's lives. Thank you for the work. Any questions for our delegation today, board? There is also a letter requesting the funding that Ms. Hackett just spoke to, which we'll address later in today's meeting. So the specific request for funding we'll just discuss in a little bit later in our meeting. But if you have any questions for the delegation today, now is your time. Yeah, Dr. Mack.
Does this go all the way through to Darcy then? Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Not seeing any. We'll look for a motion to receive the delegation. Thank you. Moved by Director Herbert, seconded by Director Crompton. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming all this way. And just shortly, in probably about 15-20 minutes, we'll address the actual request.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Board, we are on to item 6, which is our consent agenda, which just includes approval and receipt of the minutes today. Can somebody do that? Moved by Director Max, seconded by Director Weaver. Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes today? Not seeing any from anyone. We are on item 8.1, CAO verbal report. Anything for today's?
Hello, everyone. Heather Paul, CAO SLRD. Just a heads up for everyone that at the next Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District Board, there will be a workshop. We've deemed that it's not a public meeting workshop. It's a workshop with Vancouver Coastal Health, and it's the next phase of their Health Vision Sea to Sky. They were requesting individual participation, and the decision was, as a collective board, it would be very valuable to work together on that. So that will be taking place at the next Sea to Sky Regional District Hospital. Sea to Sky
Regional
Hospital District Board meeting. That's a lexicon of words. Is there any questions? Here to answer.
Thank you to you and the staff for helping coordinate that. Many of you folks around the table will have received individual requests from BCH. So hopefully this helps streamline that process for everybody. We can do it all in one go. Can I get a motion to receive the CAO verbal? Moved by Director Max, seconded by Director Crompton. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 8.2, request for decision on the approval of the 2024 Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District audited financial statement. Colin, welcome. Raj, I'll pass it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Colin Hodgins, Deputy Director of Finance. This report is requesting the approval of our 2024 audited financial statements, which is always exciting for the finance department. Maybe I'll open it up to any questions on the statements.
Great, thank you. We don't have a specific presentation today, but does anybody have any questions on the audited financial statements that are presented in our board package? Not seeing any. We have two motions that the Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District audited financial statements be approved as presented, and that the chair and treasurer, who is the director of finance, be authorized to sign the Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District 2024 audited financial statements. Moved by Director Morton, seconded by Director Pettingill. Any comments? Thank you to staff for all the work. It is a very exciting time of year to get to audited financials.
Glad we done.
And hopefully it gives you a little bit of break before we start the next budgeting cycle. Thank you very much. I will call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The chair's verbal report. I actually, in addition to CAO Paul, for the public who might be watching, so the board's going to have a workshop with BCH on their Health Vision Sea to Sky. And so this is the second phase of their engagement on their long-term visioning process for healthcare through the Sea to Sky region. They'll also be doing a number of sessions for public engagement. And so I'll just make those known here. So either the public or folks around this table might want to let people know. So there's two in Pemberton, May 1st and May 2nd. May 1st is 5:30 to 7:30. May 2nd, 4:30 to 6:30. Two in Squamish, May 3rd, 2:30 to 4:30. May 4th, 1:30 to 3:30, and then 2 in Whistler, May 3rd, 10:30 to 12:30, and then May 4th, 9:30 to 11:30. As well as an online option, May 29th from 6:30 to 8. So lots of options to engage with BCH on their second round of engagement for the long-term visioning process of what healthcare might look like in the corridor. And I encourage everyone around the table and in their communities to participate. Because it's really important that we have a good understanding of how we are working collectively with BCH and the province in order to deliver healthcare for our rapidly growing corridor. So just wanted to make that note. Other than that,
Just a note that we will be sharing it on our socials too.
great.
For more detail.
Thank you very much. And with that, that's all I have for my verbal. I'll look for a motion to approve or receive, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Pettingill. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now item 10.1, which is the follow-on letter from our delegation this morning. The request for funding from the Sea to Sky Society endowment funds. And so this is a request for $100,000 to be granted to one of the endowment funds that we just heard about in order to help support services and programs that are provided by the Hospice Society. We do have Director Hodges, sorry, Director, no, Manager Hodges, Deputy Director, thank you. Acting. Hodges here to answer any questions. This is a little bit of a unique request. The hospital district, both by act as well as by policy that we have created, typically doesn't actually provide funding for operations. That request around funding for operations is a policy that we have established at the regional hospital district. The act for regional hospital districts in the province is actually quite specific in that it requires us to fund hospitals and hospital facilities. And so this is an opportunity to have a conversation as to whether the board is willing to entertain exploring options for this sort of funding. I don't think we can direct that here today, given that there's just some unknowns around what mechanisms we'd actually be able to use to provide that funding. But if there was interest amongst the board to explore or direct staff to explore what that funding model might look like. So that's the question for the board today. I saw Director Crompton and then Director Mack.
Yeah, I would appreciate that kind of research and feedback before we considered it. So if everyone has their questions answered, I'd make a resolution to ask staff to bring back a report that investigates it.
Director Mack.
I agree with that. That's what I was going to say too. So, yeah, very good.
A few other hands. So Director Pettingill, then Rainbow, then Morden, then Hereford.
Yeah, just on that note, do we know enough now to sort of reasonably say, actually, it would have to be the regional district board and through select funds or something, and so we should actually just refer it there now rather than ask for a report? Or is there a possibility that this body might be able to accommodate it? It's worth directing a report on?
Through the chair, the Hospital District Act is specific in that it limits us to funding operations and maintenance of a hospital or health facility. I think this is a bit of a gray area in terms of providing funding that does support operations, but not directly of hospital facilities. So I think it would be good to put some more work in and determine whether it can be supported through the hospital district or whether it needs to go to the board. And if it needs to go to the board, then we can do that at a later date.
Did that answer your question, Director Pettingill? Director Rainbow, go ahead.
Well, but my first thought when I read this was that we weren't able to provide this kind of funding for this purpose. But while thinking that, I was really wishing we could, because I really value what the hospice does and recognize the amount of time that volunteers put in there to provide the kind of services that are absolutely essential, that people really need. This is not a frill in any way, shape or form. So I would support anything that we do that explores how we can, or if we can, or how, so I would say how we can. There must be some way that we can generate some funds to go into this, whether it's this board or whether it gets referred to the regional district. I'll support any kind of motion that leads us in that direction. Thank you.
Dr. Morton. Dr. Herford.
I think my questions were answered, but I'll just say that I'm supportive of exploring whether this is possible through this entity and whether, and that might be a discussion around, I know that the Hospice Society has been involved in the fit out of the facility, like, you know, if there's opportunity for this fund to be used in those specific, to have those strings attached to it, if that's beneficial, or whether we're better to move elsewhere. So I think further investigation is needed, but that's coming from a place of like, how do we figure out what can we do to participate as fulsomely as possible is where I'm coming from with this, not looking for a regulatory way out, I'm looking for a regulatory way through.
Great. Do you have a motion? You want me to put a motion on the floor?
Yeah, motion to direct staff to come back with a report that considers hospital district contribution to the
Hospice Society.
the hospice endowment.
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Rainbow. Any further comments? Yeah, Director Pettingill.
Yeah, happy to support. So I think if we are to pursue this, it does make more sense to do it through the hospital district board rather than the regional board. So it'd be good if we could figure out a way to do that.
I'm also very supportive of this direction. We know that healthcare services are delivered in a variety of forms and ways. And hospice is one of those really interesting ones where actually delivering in home is often preferred than having to move folks at end of life. And so it is a gray area. I agree with our staff that the act is quite clear that we are required to fund things like hospitals and hospital facilities, but when you're talking about end of life care, where does that fit in? So I appreciate staff's willingness to explore that a little bit. I also want to recognize that as a regional government, we don't typically fund healthcare. It's not within our realm. We know this is a really important service, and so it's why I also really appreciate the approach of the Sea to Sky Hospice Society in terms of looking at an endowment fund, because that means that we are not necessarily on the hook for funding ongoing operations, but they're looking for a diverse way to fund their operations in perpetuity. That won't necessarily require them to come back every 3 or 5 years to request that, and then it's kind of at the whim of whoever's around this table. And so that's why I'm particularly interested in the work here and how we might be able to find a way to support this request. With that, I will call the question. Any opposed to the motion? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we're on to item 11. Any late business today to the board? Not seeing any. Any directors notice the motion? Not seeing any there either. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved by Director Hersford, second by Director Thompson. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.